at vi har den ære og den heldige ting, at vi har et lille panel, som kommer fra Amsterdam, hvor vi kan sige, at rigtig mange danskere har besøgt Amsterdam, rigtig mange danskere har hørt om coffeeshops og Holland, og de har vitterligt nogle erfaringer om, hvad er det, der sker, når man griber tingene helt anderledes an. Det næste panel her kommer til at foregå på engelsk, så hvis der er nogen, der har brug for lidt oversættelse, så rækker I hånden op. Vi prøver at køre det så hurtigt som muligt, og vi har en lille præsentation her. Der er 2 politikere, som har noget nyt at fortælle om et afstemning, der er oppe her i det hollandske parlament næste uge. Og nu vil vi først præsentere Ariella Verhooy, who's a politician from the City Hall of Amsterdam, who has some news to tell us about an update about a vote in the parliament next week. Would you please give us an update? And also the other panelists is sorry, I didn't remember Tom Naben, who is a criminologist from the University of Amsterdam, and Rob Holland, who is also coming, you've been a political coordinator, or, yeah? And a legal counsel from Amsterdam. Okay, but Ariella first, please tell us about what's up, what's happening in Amsterdam.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just have a stand here. I hope everybody can hear me in the right way. Good afternoon, it's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me. First, before I start my story, I'd really like to know who of you has been in Amsterdam? Quite a few, I see. And who has visited a coffee shop while they were there? Also quite a lot, that's good. So I have a well-informed crowd, thank you. I've been invited to tell you something about the Amsterdam model. And I think I will be able to take away some misunderstandings and also tell you the latest news about where we are right now when it comes to legalizing cannabis and also the cultivation of it. Maybe if I can have the next slide. Yeah. First of all, at the moment, we have 165 coffee shops in Amsterdam. Some years ago, it was more, but still we have 1/3 of the nation's coffee shops. So whatever happens in Amsterdam is quite transcending for the rest of Holland. So it's important what Amsterdam decides and does and wants in this case. Some misunderstandings. A lot of people think that drugs are legal in Holland. They are not. Sorry, I see some question? Or not? Okay. All drugs are illegal in Holland, but we have a tolerance when it comes to the prosecution of using it and sometimes also selling it. So all drugs are listed in the Opium Act, and we make a distinction between the soft drugs and the hard drugs. And the main factor is, of course, the health risk that it concerns. We only prosecute the possession or the cultivation or the trafficking of drugs when it's in the public interest. And in Holland, we consider the separation of soft drugs and hard drugs as a public interest, which kind of makes that we don't really prosecute soft drugs unless there's a serious reason for it. So there's no enforcement priority in the use of cannabis. There's a high enforcement priority when it comes to the hard drugs and especially the dealing in and trafficking of hard drugs. So what's up with the coffee shops? Most of you appear to know that there are a lot of coffee shops in Amsterdam, and the Public Justice Department has made criteria for those coffee shops to be able to sell and stash or stack some amounts of cannabis as long as they comply to a number of criteria or rules. First of all all coffee shop owners have to have a license. And second, they have to have what we call is a declaration of tolerance. I'll come to the guidelines that are behind it in the next sheet, but when a coffee shop owner complies to the rules, he avoids prosecution. So whatever he's doing and following the rules, he's safe and fine. And it's the police department and the tax department, and in some ways also the local government or the city that check if the rules are complied by. Next sheet, please. Now, these are most of the guidelines that coffee shop owners have to comply by. I'm not going to step by all of them. Some are quite clear, I think, but I made one bold because I know that's also one of the discussion points when it comes to Denmark, and that's selling only to residents. Also in Holland, officially coffee shop owners can only sell to Dutch residents. But in Amsterdam, that's not the case, as you all well know. And that's because Amsterdam has a different prioritization when it comes to enforcement. We had a discussion with national government who gave us these rules and said, well, if we are not allowed to sell drugs to tourists, we expect to have a big problem in Amsterdam with fake drug dealers, which in fact are already there, but we expect much more. And the tourists that come for the drugs actually don't cause any nuisance. So it's not in the benefit of Amsterdam to prosecute or be strict on coffee shops who sell to tourists. But we had to make a deal with the national government to make this tolerated by them. And instead of enforcing the sale to tourists, we have to close coffee shops that are within 250 meters of schools. And then with schools, I mean schools which have students that are under 18 years old. So at the moment, the number of coffee shops in Amsterdam is reducing, partly because of this rule. There are still some coffee shops that are within too close circle of the school, so we have to close them. We are not in favor of it, and we've tried, I'm from a Democratic Party, we've tried everything we can to avoid it, but that's a deal that's been made, and there's unfortunately not much to do about that. Next slide, please. Is everything perfect when it comes to coffee shops in Holland? No. I think we're only halfway there. We have this front door, back door discussion that you're probably quite aware of. There's a big paradox, a controversy, when you see that you are allowed to have a stash of 500 grams in a coffee shop, you are allowed to sell 5 grams per person, but you're not allowed to get it. Officially, nobody knows where it comes from, where it's grown, and how it gets into the shop, because all of that part is illegal. And of course, in a way, government, by tolerating this situation, is facilitating criminal gangs to still grow and profit from this market, which is there and which is tolerated. So we are still trying to make a big deal of this front or back door problem, and we have big hopes that next week we will make a big step in this discussion. There will be a new act that will be discussed in Parliament. My colleague Rob Hofland is one of the people who wrote this act, and this act actually proposes to also tolerate the growth or the cultivation of cannabis in Holland. The best thing would even be to legalize it, but all kinds of legal counselors concluded that that's not possible because of international, amongst others, European treaties. So this tolerance policy is the best realistic option to go by. And in fact, it comes down to when companies comply to all kinds of rules, they are allowed to grow and get checked and controlled by government. So this Wednesday we have this discussion on the national level, and we have very high hopes that there's a majority. We have 150 members in Parliament, and right now, as we have counted, 76 are for and 74 are against. So everybody should be there and should vote for, and then we can have a major step. So this is an important week for us. So far, the story I want to tell, what I'd really like is for you to ask questions about our situation, and also please use the knowledge of my colleagues. Tom, who is a researcher at the University of Amsterdam in criminology, he knows everything there is to know about the drug use in Holland, and Rob, who knows everything about the new act. So please feel free and ask any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Arielle Farhøj.
Så det, der er faktisk sket her, det er jo noget af nyhed. Det har ikke været rapporteret i danske medier, men altså, der kan faktisk ske en fuldstændig revolution i hollandsk politik i form af at tolerere også dyrkning på igen en speciel måde, hvor man altså tolererer det, men ikke legaliserer det som sådan. Nu har vi endelig chancen for at stille nogle spørgsmål. Er der nogen, der har lyst til at spørge de hollandske politikere om noget? Tuxen, kom. Korte spørgsmål, ikke? Ingen taler. Det er godt.
Skal der komme lys på?
We have a question for the...
Lys på politikerne, tak.
As I told you, we like a coffee shop in Denmark, and I like to hear, how did you get the first coffee shop in Holland back then? How did you get it realized? How did you get the first coffee shop in
How did
Holland?
it come about that you have coffee shops?
How did it start?
What's the story of the first one?
Hello, yeah. Well, that's a long story, but I keep it short. This one of the first coffee shops was not an official coffee shop, but was simply at home. There were people at the end of the 50s. There were sailors who were selling marijuana and hashish in jazz clubs, and that was the beginning of a new movement. We call it the counterculture. So that was the early beginning of smoking weed, and from there on there was slowly scenes in the heart of Amsterdam who are using marijuana and later also LSD, etc. And from that moment there were a few entrepreneurs who opened more home-like places where you can buy something. So there was not officially a coffee shop. When there was a big change in the Opium Act, and Arielle also told about this, the decriminalization of cannabis in 1976. That means that they put the marijuana from list 1 till 2, and from there on there was also more space for politicians to decriminalize the marijuana. So from that moment, there were slowly entrepreneurs who opened officially coffee shops, and one of the first one was Mellow Yellow. I think also somewhere in the 70s, probably in that time. And then there was a rapid growth of coffee shops in Amsterdam till now. So it's like wave-like trends. We had historically the highest amount was around 400, and now it's almost half now, so 180, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. I also have a question for you. You asked the audience how many had been to Amsterdam, and as you saw, quite a lot had been. I know you've had many visitors from all over the world studying this model. What do they typically ask? What do you think they can learn in a hostile environment? And I'd like to ask you, do you see any future in collaboration with the city of Copenhagen?
It's true, we actually do get a lot of visitors, and a lot of people want to get inspiration from the Amsterdam model, even though it's not perfect. A lot of things that we get asked is how do you protect your youth? Isn't it so that many of your youngsters now also use cannabis because it's so easy? And the answer is no. If you look at the numbers, and Ton knows everything about it, we are in the middle class of the number of young people that use cannabis. So we don't experience this. And other questions that we get asked involve what do the neighbors of the coffee shop or your inhabitants feel about these coffee shops. And what we see happening is at the moment there are quite a few coffee shops that have to be closed. I just told you about it because of the schools for one reason. And people who live not close to the coffee shops, they are concerned about the closure because they are afraid that there will be fake drug dealers on the street who don't ask anybody for identity, because when in a coffee shop you're always asked for an ID, who sell all kinds of shit. So actually our citizens are also quite happy with the system as we know it right now. If we see any future in the collaboration with Copenhagen, I would say yes. Yesterday we were in the City Hall and we met with the Lord Mayor. I think you call your head of healthcare on a local level. And we also heard from the members of the City Council in Copenhagen that you kind of have the same issue as we have in Amsterdam, that on a local level, politicians mostly agree on what should happen, legalization or at least tolerating cultivation and sales. But on a national level, we get no as an answer, and I think that's very comparable in our. So we can learn from each other how can we convince our national level, and how also as bigger cities, as capital cities, how can we get clear and get through to the people how important it is for your cities to have a safe cannabis-friendly environment. So yes, I think we can still collaborate.
Any other questions? Det er fra by til by, Københavner-modellen og Amsterdam-modellen.
I just like to ask you, have there at any time been politicians in Holland talking in Europe about having this model you have in Amsterdam around in Europe? Because we don't see any things going on from Holland where you want to export this idea of having coffee shops. For some years ago I saw that in Luxembourg they have to the border into Holland made their own coffee shops as a protest against the coffee shops in Holland. They say they will be able to help if there come some visitors from Holland. They have their own coffee shops. And I'm just thinking, have you, some politicians in Holland talked about exporting this idea to the rest of Europe?
Well, actually, exporting or giving our idea to other countries, it's not. This is not the phase where we are in, because we have to defend ourselves to our neighbor countries, Belgium and Germany, but even to France. Why we have this system? Because we get some criticism of those countries, because they say we have a strict system, but it doesn't work because the people can get their cannabis at in your country. So we have to defend our position with coffee shops to neighboring countries. Whether this is justice that we have to defend ourselves or not, I don't know, but we have to do, and it's also used by people in Holland who are against the tolerance policy. They say, you are making our neighbors angry, you shouldn't do that. So it's more in terms of defending ourselves about our system than promote it, really.
Frank Hedegaard skal på scenen.
Good evening again, everybody. My name is Claus Nielsen. We're several entrepreneurs in Denmark who are waiting for the politicians of Denmark to change the law. And we are at this time apparently at a brink of a change in our laws. The 8th of February there's a hearing in Christiansborg on a, should we say, more serious political level than this about how to come about. What my answer is specifically to you guys is, on the vote you're making in Amsterdam, has there been, what's it called in English, a report on how to control the production of cannabis, how to control the quality, the amounts, and the grow places? Because we have several issues from politicians in Denmark when they ask us as businessmen how to do this. They want us to come with, what you say, proposals from us how to control all the different issues that we have in the growing rooms, going from who's growing it to the quality control to the final product going to the medicinal patients.
Did you get the question?
Just let me check if I got it right. You asked if we have any suggestions on how to control the quality of the product. If we have a program. My colleague can tell you all about it.
So if the new act will be there next Wednesday, then we will have what we call a closed coffee shop system. This means that from the seed till the smoke, everything is controlled in a way by the government. So there are regulations for what's in the product. There are regulations about packaging. So, for example, on the packaging must be what's in it, and maybe a warning that it might be harmful, or a science-based warning. And what will also be a rule is that when you close the package, when the cultivator closes the package, it doesn't go open until it's bought by the consumer, so that the consumer can be absolutely sure what's in it. So.
Well, a lot of the discussion on the production side from the gardeners is that we have over 280 registered strains worldwide. And which strains work specifically for which diseases? Has there been any research made on the different terpenoid profiles regarding to customer and client service? Because one thing is to sell cannabis, another thing is to sell a specific medicine. And if you want a specific medicine, you obviously have to have a stable production of medicine, which is controlled. Which steps has been done to meet this?
There's a difference in Holland. There's a strict difference between medicinal cannabis and recreational cannabis. There are, I think, 5 types of different medicinal cannabis. We don't know if it's enough, but recreational cannabis, there are lots of things, but it's a strictly different policy for those two. And about those.
Yeah, there's one by state-controlled factory in Veendam. It's a small city somewhere in the Netherlands, Veendam. And this is, they produced under a state, they produced the medical cannabis officially. State license medical cannabis. As a consumer, you need a recipe and go to a drugstore to buy, to get your medical cannabis over there. The thing is that there's only a few varieties, and it's a little bit more expensive. It's more expensive than you normally buy in a coffee shop. But at least there is a opportunity to get medical cannabis in the Netherlands already. So it's for, I guess, for 10 years now. That is, this is already legal. This is officially legalized. Yeah. Okay, of course, it's licensed by the state. So
in the new vote that's proposed, there is actually no change in the medical scene of the cannabis?
No.
Okay, that's actually all I wanted to know.
Okay. A quick answer. Question. Very quick.
Yeah, I would like to ask how to be a coffee shop owner, and how, if I was if I want to make a coffee shop, can I do that? Can a young people just say, I want to make my career as a coffee shop owner, or is it mostly people from the who have the knowledge, or who are in this coffee shop business? Is it people from before 76, or is it new people going in?
Well, historically there was the first entrepreneurs with a lot of knowledge about plants and all kinds of different types and variations, etc. And in the beginning, in the beginning of the 80s, 80s, it was quite easy to start a coffee shop. And there were at a certain time there were so many coffee shops that we decide, and the local authorities decide to watch more critically under which circumstances the coffee shops were open. So there was a new list of criteria and regulations Ariella also mentioned before. So at this moment, it is not, you can't open a coffee shop in Amsterdam because there is a zero limit, there's a maximum limitation. But we still have 180 left. Probably in the future there will be in certain areas there is a possibility of open a new coffee shop. That's possible, but well, it's not easy to, yeah.
Because one could be afraid that that the government will keep the coffee shop very far away from where it used to be, and it's in my head will do it very boring in a way. Like I don't like to go to the apotheke or to some rustfri stål Barresso kind of.
I understand you, Trine. Yeah, thank you very much.
I think we have to end now, but please don't leave this stage. We're calling the Danish politicians up as well, so you can